I played 100 days of Stardew Valley in which I decorated a fully upgraded shed every single day. Designing things in Stardew is one of my favorite parts about this game, but this is going to be a challenge. All that I have is a list of ideas and a few mods to help me along the way. If you enjoy this video, please consider giving it a like as it took a very long time to make. To do this challenge, I'm going to be using the CJB Cheats menu and the item spawner, as well as instant buildings, because otherwise this would take years and not be fun, and I don't like that. I'm also only going to do one shed per day, and I won't be going back to fix any sheds that I don't like. So if the shed is ugly, it stays ugly. But if I run out of time on a shed, then I'll go back and finish it. First, I needed a save file with a bunch of sheds. There we go, 100 sheds. Now, let's make this look a little bit nicer and not horrifically ugly. I'm sure I won't regret this later. My original idea was to design the theme sheds like villagers and festivals on the day of their birthdays or the day that it actually happens in-game, but a year in Stardew Valley is 112 days. So I had to do some math and come up with a calendar that I liked. Finally, it's time to get down to some decorating. We begin by displaying all of the spring crops listed on the wiki. I wanted to make it feel green and alive, using some stacked pathing like the wood floor to bring some variation. Overall, you're going to see a lot of these symmetrical builds and designs in the next sheds. Day 2 saw the creation of this furnace shed, which is similar to how I design my actual smelting sheds. I don't intend for these processing sheds to be extremely efficient, it's more about the design here. Day 3 is a showcase of the crafts room, with all of the bundle options laid out along with their rewards. To show the wild seeds for each season, I used garden pots and grew the crop, taking inspiration from the actual crafts room. Day 4 was our first NPC-themed room, and it was Kent. He's a bit of a challenging NPC, so I decided to theme his shed around the outdoors based on his schedule and made a little deck area to contrast the outside. Day 5 is a storage shed, which is one of my favorite types of sheds to make. We have a crafting area in the middle with all of the popular resources attached to a crafting bench. Then everything else alongside the walls with signs indicating what's inside. If I had more time, I would have filled these sheds, but unfortunately, I don't. Day 6, we have Lewis. I'm gonna be honest, I really don't like this guy, so his theme shed is pretty uninspired. We have his favorite dishes, some hot peppers and tea growing in at the bottom, and of course, a shrine to himself because that seems like the kind of thing he'd have in his house. Day 7 is all about fishing equipment, and I added in some fish tanks for variety. A lot of blues and greens in this shed to evoke that feeling of water. Day 8 is a coffee-themed shed. We've started by making little seating areas before fencing off an area for the coffee plants, added in some kegs, and then started decorating the seating area. Day 9 is Vincent's shed, so it's themed after a playhouse. A lot of bright colors, a lone snail in a fish tank, I guess, and some of his favorite foods. Day 10 is another community center showcase, this time the pantry. I made it look sort of like the actual pantry in the community center, added some leaves for overgrowth, some chests as well to make it look more like a storage area, and then displayed all of the possible crops. And the sun sets on day 10. Only 90 more sheds. God, this is going to be long. But we keep at it here, and day 11 is the Egg Festival shed. I put a bunch of eggs, even slime eggs. Those are technically eggs. Of course, a strawberry patch, which is the real reason to go to the festival, and then what Pierre sells. A dog? Sure, why not? Not much space to run around in, sorry about that. Day 12 is Haley's shed, so I loaded it up with flowers, added her camera, and a little photography studio. Of course, I made sure to include her favorite things as well. Day 12 is a green space, so I got to use some of my favorite tricks, like using grass indoors to cover up plant pots, or using the icy rug covered in grass to look like a pond, and make just a nice little relaxing park area to come and chill in. Day 14 is supposed to be an art museum, and I ended up basically just displaying Lupini paintings and some more interesting statues and decorations in the game. I also added a small little seating area with coffee and tea. Day 15 it rains, which is fitting because this is the Joja shed, and all I have to say about it is that it's blue. Extremely blue. Moving on, day 16 we get to use a color that isn't exclusively blue because this is Pam's shed. I tried to fit the design of the trailer with this shed, which means a lot of brown flooring and wallpaper. Day 17 is the fish tank display for the community center, where each bundle has its own fish tank dedicated to it and of course a cozy little sitting area with fishing and ocean related items. Day 18, we have Shane. I followed a similar pattern with this one as I have with other NPCs, showing their favorite gifts, and of course, Shane loves chickens, so I gave him a chicken statue and also grew some fairy roses for Jazz. Day 19 is an unthemed restaurant, so I made it look like a rooftop pub with this city wallpaper. I sectioned it into 2 different areas, and the dishes I chose to place on tables are essentially dishes that aren't very fancy, but that you'd find on basically every chain restaurant menu. Day 20, this is the Wild Medicine Bundle Room, which if you don't know is a remixed bundle. This one I made it look more natural instead of a showcase with purple mushrooms and hops planted everywhere, white algae and fiddlehead ferns as well. Day 21 is the flower dance shed, so I made it look like a little replica of the actual flower dance area and of course, put flowers everywhere. I really like how this one turned out, I think it looks really cute. Day 22 is themed after Junimos, so I grabbed all of the Junimo related furniture and made a rustic looking shed, almost as if we're in one of their huts. I also added little end tables to signify the different bundles and the gems at the bottom to match their colors. This next shed is Pierre. At least it's sunny outside. Pierre's shed is essentially a mini replica of his store with the seeds he sells and his own liked foods on the counter up top. Yeah, I don't really like Pierre. On to another NPC that isn't Pierre. Day 24 is Emily's shed, so I added in a gem display and a little tailoring area as well. This alien rarecrow I like to imagine is a mannequin that she uses to test out all of the clothing that she tailors. Day 25, a quarter of the way through this insane project, and this is the all flowers shed. So we've got a sectioned shed with all of the different flowers in flower pots and the flowers that you can collect through foraging as well. I'm so exhausted already. Day 26 is a little guest house, and I wish you could place beds and sheds. That would add so much to these builds, but we can't for now. So I made a little outside area in the snow and then a cozy interior like a little woodsy cabin. I also tried out combining wooden paths, as you can see. Day 27 is all about the hat mouse. Of course, the main rarecrow behind the counter needed the mouse ears, some gold, because the man's gotta be paid. Even though this shed is pretty simple, I like it a lot. Day 28 is Jazz's turn for a theme shed, so I used a lot of reds and pinks, kinda designed it like Vincent's, but a little bit more sectioned. I also tried a new way of sectioning off crops by using dressers and the blossom rug with grass on top. I'm not really sure how I like it yet. And the sun sets on the first season of this farm, but we're not even close to done yet. Day 29, the first day of summer. This shed is a showcase of all of the summer crops. I wanted to make this one a little bit less symmetrical like a lot of the builds have been so far, so I combined different fences and added some secondary pathing as well, and I really like how this one came out. Day 30 is a desert-themed shed. The idea was to make a mini version of the desert with the galaxy sword pillars, fish, skull caverns, and oasis seeds. Day 31 is probably the most fun I've ever had designing a shed. This is the tailoring shed. Because you can't display shirts or pants, I used the alien rarecrows again and placed tailored hats on them along with the item you need to tailor in order to get that hat. Lots of dressers, colored chests for dyes, and the sewing machine, of course. And I passed out just at the end, so I came back to place the last few items the next day. Next up, we have Gus, who gets the 30-second shed, and I made a little pub like the saloon, decorated it with things that he likes, and tried to use the dressers as a stand-in for a bar. Day 33, we have Maru. We have a desk with a computer and various items she uses in her machines, a couple little sitting areas with some of her favorite things, and a little corner dedicated to research. Day 34 is themed to the luau. First was the shorts, then I built a rough form of the luau pot with end tables and chests. Then I picked a few items for each reaction and laid them out on the tables. Day 35 is the boiler room showcase, and I also really like this one. I went with a lot of grays and smaller plants to decorate, giving a small pop of color, some furnaces, and stone chests as well. And I used the wood stove fireplace because I think it fits really well with the boiler room feel. Day 36 is Alex's shed, who was quite a challenge because this guy only has 2 unique loved gifts, so I split his shed into an indoor and outdoor form. Because his 2 favorite loved gifts are both food items, I made a big kitchen with the ingredients for a complete breakfast and salmon dinner. Day 37 is a shed dedicated to kegs, which you can never have too many of, but this shed is not supposed to be extremely efficient. So I laid out these kegs in rows and then noted what each row would theoretically be brewing with signs and a garden pot, although I think it may be a little confusing which is which, but that's okay. Day 38 is a little indoor pool. The crystal floor looks like pool tiles, so I outlined the entire area with it and added a little diving board. Day 39 is dedicated to the crystallarium, and as you can see, it took me a while to figure out how I wanted to lay out everything. I eventually settled on this symmetrical layout and organized the minerals according to color, placing them on end tables. Day 40 is Sam's shed, who was also a bit of a challenge, so I did the usual formula of including his favorite things and then building him a little stage setup on the left-hand side. If I were to go back, I think some decorative plants could have really helped fill this one out. Oh yay, more rain! Next up is the preserve shed, which I included jelly, pickles, and roe. We have signs to differentiate the rows of preserve jars, and then I made a mini area just for fish roe, including some fish that I like to have in my fish ponds. Day 42 is another NPC shed, this time Demetrius, and I wanted to capture that lab feeling, so a lot of blues and cool colors. But he does have a more cozy area that features his favorite items and a recipe that he sends you. Now we start getting into some of my favorite designs, and that is the fish tank sheds. This one showcases ocean fish, and I made it to look like a rugged beach scene with the massive tanks, with coral and seaweed in each one, and of course, little seating areas. Day 44 is the dwarf shed, and I wanted to include a bunch of the dwarven artifacts as well instead of just the NPC, so I made his shed look like a cave, showcased all of his favorite items, and then included a little shop. Luckily, there's a dwarf rarecrow, so the shed doesn't feel super lifeless. Next up is the riverfish shed, and this one is also very symmetrical. I wanted to make it feel more like the Cindersap Forest River, so it's extremely green, lots of plant life around as well. Day 46 is themed to Willy, and I made an indoor and outdoor portion, but flipped it this time so that the wallpaper acted as the outdoors. The fish tanks I filled with crabs, based on that one side quest. Next we have the lake fish, and I decided to use more fish tanks for this one, but make them smaller and break them up a little bit more. I also played around with different decorative styles by placing plants behind the tanks to give it more depth and make it feel more like murky lake water. Day 48 we have Leo, and this shed I had no idea what I was going to do, so I started with a jungle and then decided to partially recreate his treehouse with log panels. Day 49 is a showcase of all of the minerals in the game, which I tried to organize by geotype, so top left is frozen, top right is magma, etc., but it's obviously not exact. Then the entire area is topped off with a prismatic shard in the top middle, different flooring types, and sitting areas. Halfway! This is for the moonlight jellies. If I were to revise these designs a little bit, this one would definitely get a mini jukebox playing the moonlight jellies theme. So we've officially done 50 sheds, and we still have 50 more to go. This has been so much already. But we've got to keep going, so day 51 is Penny's shed. Similar to other NPC sheds so far, I really use those bookshelves because of how much time she spends at the library, so the back of the shed is more of a library setup than anything. Day 52 is a playhouse for the kids. We have a lot of bright colors in here, and whatever I could reasonably class as a toy, some regular bookshelves and artist bookshelves to fill it out. Day 53 is about the Skull Caverns. We have displays of iridium and a supply chest at the entrance, then I added a rug to symbolize floor 100 and Mr. Key. Day 54 I spent designing Elia's shed, which I wanted to keep pretty close to the sea theming with the decor choices. Other than that, it's a pretty standard NPC shed, cozy spots, and their favorite items. Day 55 is the Ginger Island shed, and I had so many ideas that I wanted to fit in, but I decided to keep it to a minimum. So I made the Pirate's Cove, then built up the resort, then I added in all of the special Ginger Island fish and some signs to indicate the trader. Day 56 is themed to be a breakfast restaurant, which I themed after an actual breakfast restaurant in my hometown. It's very rustic looking and very cozy. Day 57 is also the first day of fall, so it was time to showcase all of the fall crops. This one follows a similar design theory to the summer shed with garden pots, but I made it look a little more symmetrical, as I wanted the fall crop colors to be the focus. Day 58 is the bulletin board shed, and this one was probably the most challenging to figure out. The shed is sectioned off into the different bundles, and I used a bunch of different pathing and flooring and colors to section it all off. Then I included all of the materials. The dye bundle was probably the most challenging because it didn't really have a natural space, but to be fair, that red cabbage is the bane of my existence, so it makes sense. Day 59, we're back to an NPC shed, this time for Jody. And I gotta be honest, there's not much interesting about her character, so this shed is pretty simple. A lot of food and a small area for kids. Next up, we have an apartment-style shed, and I used the same technique that I did for Leo's shed and the Pirate's Cove in that I used log panels to overlay the wallpaper. For this build, I think it would have really helped if I could place down beds, but I think it turned out okay in the end. Day 61's featured NPC is Abigail, so I got right down to the usual designs, adding in her favorite things while trying to stick to her look. Day 62 was a pretty time-consuming one, displaying all of the different weapons in the game. I personally think this one would be super cool to try and build in-game and collect one of every weapon, but let's not get distracted. We still have so many more sheds to build. Day 63 is Sandy's shed, and because she loves flowers, I made sure to add a bunch of them. I didn't make this one as symmetrical, instead I wanted a bit more of a freeform design because I think that really fits her character. Day 64 is the Stardew Valley Fair. My idea for this one was to recreate the other NPC displays, so we have Pierre, Willie, Marlin, and Marnie. The middle areas with chests could work as a storage for the Farmer's Fair items for their own display. And speaking of Marnie, she gets our 65th shed. I did the usual NPC style and wanted to make sure this one really felt like a farmhouse. I also included her little shop, vacant, as always. Nah, but for real guys, she's there every day except Monday and Tuesday and 2 Thursdays in a year. This is really not that hard. We've done a lot of themed processing sheds so far, but not one for all of the other machines, so that's what this one is for. I made rows of all the machines I could think of, and it wouldn't be my shed without a little seating area. We've done the minerals, and now it's time for the artifacts. It took me a while to sort this one out again, so I settled on this layout and grouped the artifacts up as best I could. Then I played around with different flooring types until I settled on the crystal floor. And I forgot the dinosaur egg. Day 68 is Robin, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I sectioned the shed into a workshop filled with projects, her shop counter, and a small sitting area. And if you'd thought I designed enough seating areas, wrong. Here's a shed dedicated to them, a library. Not much to say about this one, except that I love using the office furniture when it's appropriate. Day 70 we have another display, this time for rings. Of all of the sheds in this project, I think this one may be the one I'm most unsure of design-wise. I keep going back and forth between really liking it and then really not liking it. Speaking of being unsure about designs, George. Buddy, you are so uninspiring. And I mean that in the design sense because his shed is also pretty simple, mostly because he only likes leeks. So I ended up throwing a bunch of other items in there that could vaguely relate. Day 72 we have another simple shed. This is a hayloft. As a kid, I spent a lot of time on a farm. I really just liked going back to my roots with this one. Day 73 is Spirits Eve. Because the main Spirits Eve attraction is a maze that I have no hope of recreating on this scale, I ended up collecting all of the spooky items I could and arranging them as best I could. Day 74 is a bakery where I tried to play around with some different showcase designs as you saw with the fish tank. In the end, I opted to keep it fairly simple, creating a back kitchen area to prepare food and styled it like a bakery I like to go to every so often in my hometown. Day 75. Oh my god, we're starting to get close to the end. We're gonna make it. At this point in the process, the burnout was really starting to hit, but I was almost done, so it was time to just keep pushing through. This one is obviously Krobus's shed. Another restaurant design, this time themed to mining. These dishes all provide a mining boost or an attack defense boost. In this one, I included a little to-go counter as well to grab your meal and rush out to Skull Cavern. Day 77, Linus. I tried to recreate his tent as best I could while also adding in some natural decorations around it. Day 78 is Caroline's room. I wanted to capture that same energy of her sunroom except expand it and make it a little bit more visually interesting. This next one, you'll be shocked to know, is a fishing restaurant, and of all of the restaurant designs I made, I think this one is my favorite. I just love using fish tanks in designs, and I think they add a lot of movement to an interior that is otherwise pretty static. We're down to our final event sheds, and this one is the Festival of Ice. And this one was tough. The Festival of Ice doesn't really have anything other than fishing, so I ended up making the snowman rarecrows be the main focus with the fish in the background. Day 81 we have another keg shed, this time for tea. I could totally see myself building this one. I think it's really cozy and the contrasting colors work really well together. Day 82 is one of my most involved sheds, one that I've named the Trader Shed. This one is supposed to be functional, where you store all of the items needed to trade for the item on the sign. The left side is for the Desert Trader and the right for the Island Trader. They're also roughly organized by day, but it was hard to note which day was which. Day 83's design came really easy to me. This one is for Sebastian, and while it's not the most unique or complex design I've done, I think it fits pretty well for him. Day 84 is a shed that I've classed as the Adventuring Shed. It's essentially a green space that will eventually have slimes once they hatch, and I also included an area with some of the more notable monster eradication goal prizes in the top left corner. 3 seasons done, and I don't even have to play this one out. I will dream of sheds when this is done. It's winter. However, there are only 2 types of seeds that grow in winter, fiber and wild seeds. So I made another indoor-outdoor split, then made an indoor sitting area. But you don't need to be limited to those crops in winter, so I decided to make a second greenhouse. There's no pattern to how I planted these seeds, I just wanted this one to look as colorful as possible because winter is kind of a barren landscape. I would know. I'm Canadian. Going back to NPCs, Day 87 belongs to Harvey. These ones have a pretty set formula now, things they like, things that they do for work, and a small sitting area. Next up is our night market shed. The night market is by far my favorite festival, so I wanted to display a bunch of the various vendors and activities you can interact with. Day 89 we have the Wizard, where I tried to recreate a bunch of aspects of the tower and quests with the resources that I have. I think I was at least able to capture the feel. Next we go back to the aquarium designs. These tanks are filled with specialty fish, like the legendary fish, and fish from odd places like the void salmon, the mines, Ginger Island, etc. Okay, we only have 10 more to go. And of course you show up. No, I don't care. It's kind of fitting Pierre shows up on the day I design a missing bundle themed shed. Instead of showcasing an individual item, I also showed off the machines used to process them. I tried to create a fish pond with void salmon using a rug. We're getting close to the end now with our 90-second shed. This one is Evelyn's, and I wanted to make sure to include the garden pots as she gives the farmer the recipe and is often seen gardening. At this point, I was counting how many sheds I had left when I realized there were only 8 empty sheds, but 9 left to design. Oh, that's embarrassing. At least with instant buildings, that wasn't super painful. Back to our regular scheduled programming, we have the special crops shed, which I pulled from the wiki. Issue is ancient fruit and sweet gem berries can't grow inside, so my workaround was to place them on signs and use a specific plant. Next up is the Lucky Restaurant, which is not as full as the others, but I think it looks pretty bright for being such a simple design. All of the foods in here give luck buffs. One of our last NPCs for this project is Leah. This one I really wanted to capture that cottage vibe, and of course, a lot of art. The Last Festival. A simple design as you can see, but I wanted to contrast the walls, which are very busy, and make sure that the tree is the main centerpiece. Today is the day that I finish this project. This was the final recording session that I did, and we start with our final NPC, Clint. Gotta be honest, I don't like this guy, so he doesn't get a nicely decorated space. Deal with it. Speaking of final, this one is our final restaurant design, this time using artisan ingredients. I included the processing machines to section everything off and wanted to make it feel a bit more ornate. Day 99. This one is dedicated to all the potential iridium crops you can grow, which I've personally never done, but they exist. The seeds are listed in order of season mostly and are extremely colorful like most of the crop sheds are. Shed 100. Let's do this. This is our perfection shed, with each item on a table representing one element of the perfection score. But I'll let you guys figure out what's what. So there we are, 100 days and 100 sheds. This is months in the making. Going back, I think my favorite sheds are the bulletin board and Caroline's shed, and if I had more days, I think I'd fix up this farm and paint all of the buildings, but that may be for another time. I can't imagine myself doing another 100 days, but if there is interest, maybe I'll sacrifice my sanity again. 1.6 is coming eventually, and if there is interest, I may make this farm file available so you can walk through all of the sheds and see them all for yourselves. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you're interested in Stardew Valley design content, that's what I do, and I'm hoping to post a lot more in 2024. I hope to see you guys again soon.